Right guys, here we've got the finished image. Let me just revert back and we will reset our edits back to the original image. So I'll be editing this image as though I'm going to be posting it on Instagram, which I probably will do at a later date. So if we crop the image to 16:9 and we straighten up the image very slightly, happy with that there. And then usually my first protocol on these sort of images is the car is relatively dark. I've tried to not overexpose the car because I will just blow out the background as well. So generally trying to get the exposure in the background correct makes your car a little bit darker. There is other things you can do, such as bracket modes and where you can combine images at a later date, but I think the Sony cameras, A7IV, any of the newer ones, they're just incredible. Low light detail that they still keep is insane. So my usual first protocol is, if we go over to the masking tool here, after we're happy with our crop, click on mask, and I usually, you can use subject select, so you can use this button there, and what you'll find is it will select the subject. Sometimes it just misses things, like the edge of the car there. You can use object select, so this usually works quite well sometimes as well. So if you draw over, it will select the subject, and as you can see, it's actually got that tiny section of the car is selected this time. Now, our next port of call, you can do this either way. So generally in my images, I prefer to have the backgrounds a little bit darker. That makes the image pop. But because we've exposed for the background, not the car, we do need to brighten the car up. So you can do this either way. You can just bring up the exposure of the car slightly and just lift those shadows. Just brings out a little bit more detail in the back of the car. And then what we'll need to do is we'll need to create another mask and go on objects, go on object select. We'll select the car again, but this time we're going to go to the invert button here. If you press invert, it will invert to the background. So then what I generally do is I bring the exposure down. And as you can see, the more you bring the exposure down, the more the car tends to pop out of the image. So at this point in the image, things that I tend to look for are just little things that just annoy me and I want to get rid of in the image. Sometimes there's little bits, sometimes it's not too many. So if we go over to the remove tool here, this is a new tool within Lightroom. It used to just be a Photoshop only tool, and there was a one in Lightroom, but it didn't work very well. Since the latest Lightroom update, this has become an incredibly powerful tool in Lightroom. There's still instances where I will go across to Photoshop and use it in there, this sign being one of them. I will show you how it removes the sign in Lightroom, but if you want to go into Photoshop and try the remove tool, you'll see what I mean. The AI generally works a lot better within Photoshop, and it will fill this area in much more. I'll show you a little workaround with that when we get over to it. But if we just start drawing on little things here, like these twigs down at the bottom, these are not going to be much of a factor because I'm going to be putting a linear gradient in from the bottom of the screen in a little while, and I'll show you how that makes the car pop right off the screen, and it draws the eye up from the bottom of the screen up to the car. So I'll just remove those few things. I will just use the bracket keys here to make our circle bigger. And then now what I'll do is I will draw over this sign, and we will just remove the sign. And what will happen is the area, there were some leaves that were in focus around this area. So the sign gets removed. It doesn't always do a tremendous job. So the sign's got removed, but you can see there's a strange sort of blurred area. What we can do within Lightroom is if we get the clone stamp tool and press option, we can cut an area of leaves, which is around there, and then we can paste those areas in like that, and it removes the strange areas that the tool has created as it's filled them in. So other things that I tend to remove are, let's make our brackets smaller, tiny little light sources like that in the tree. I'll just find them distracting. And there we have it. And there's our much cleaned up image. There's just a couple of more little things that I usually like to do. So if we go across to our masking tool again, we click on here and we create a radial mask. So on cars, I tend not to like the number plates. They can be very, very bright. So what I tend to just do is I'll draw a radial mask over the number plate area. And then if we just go down in our edit module on the side, and we'll just turn the saturation down of the plate. So it's still yellow, but it's not as in your face. Another very, very clever tool which I've covered in a recent video on Media Mondays is the point color tool. So what we're going to do here is we'll use the point color tool and we will just select some of the reds and just drag this saturation very slightly. So as you can see, it zooms into a very, very close level. So then we can pick a few other colours and we can go and turn the saturation right up. So it just makes these headlights pop on the rear. So another little area for masking as well that I've just noticed. You can do this, you could sit here for hours. Let's get the brush tool, use our brackets on the keyboard to make the area bigger. And this section under the car just doesn't match the darkened background that we created when we used the subject select tool and darken the background. So we've just drawn under the car. We'll just turn the exposure down just so it matches the overall image and everything looks a bit more together. Then the final thing, what I usually do, we'll go to linear gradients, we'll draw up from the bottom of the screen. So we can darken from the bottom running up. It will be darker in this area and it gets lighter and lighter. So sometimes when you've edited the rear of your car, if you want these side areas to have the darkening as well, we can pull it right up. But when we use the linear gradient tool, the issue with it is it will darken this area of the car. So over here where we've created our linear gradient, there's a plus and a minus tool. So if you click on the minus tool and click on objects, and then just draw here the bottom half of the car, you'll see what the tool does. There we go. So it's unmasked the car. So the AI has worked out what should be unmasked there and just masked all the way around the car without us having to individually draw around it like we would in Photoshop. So then what I tend to do is I just turn the exposure down and you'll see the linear gradient come from the bottom. And we've darkened all this foreground and it's really, really made the car pop. So what we've gone from, we'll just go to a full screen. Just with those few little edits there, we've gone from that to that. I just think it makes a lot more internet-worthy, Instagrammable photo. It makes the car really pop. It makes it the subject of the image. And that's how I've been editing my images for quite a while now. So if you like what I've done in this video, or you want to comment, if you like, subscribe. Subscribers would be great. Anything will help me push forward. I really, really want to push this channel, make it a lot bigger. So if you could hit that subscribe button, it would help me massively. Thanks very much for watching. Come back for next week's Media Monday.